Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastuba Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Friday's study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We go through 18,000 verses in, I don't know, we don't know how many years it's going to take us to do this.
I think it'll take 8 years total.
Really? Okay. So we're 4 years in. We're about halfway there. This is exciting.
If we go at this continue.
What do you recommend if a person just joins? Because we have a lot of, because we just did Rich Roll, and I just did this other big podcast. What do you think? You think
I recommend
should people start right away and like follow us today, or go back and do old ones? What do you think?
I recommend that you start today. You start with us now and follow along, and then on your free time you go back and you work your way up.
People do it. It sounds like a Himalayan peak to climb, but people do it all the time. I get
people do it all the time.
People
we just
do
got
it all
a
the time.
message yesterday. Someone said, I'm listening to 5 a day right now.
Well, some people have these jobs where you could, they've got to do stuff with their hands, but their minds are not doing anything. So they just listen to podcasts. Anyway, we've got a lot of good positive feedback lately. So if you're coming over from a Ritual Podcast, welcome to the show. This is our daily study of yoga. It's not up dog and down dog. It's yoga philosophy, how to connect the soul, the jiva, to Bhagavan, to source, actually. Okay. And here we are with live with Miss Mara, who has some announcements.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mara G. You're halfway off the screen, man. Let's bring you on over.
Mara made it great. We had a nice little kirtan program last night. Little one. We're having a bigger one. But, Mara made some good prasad yesterday.
Don Cayley brought us famous cookies.
Don Cayley brought these. Oh my God, these
They're
chewy
so
cookies.
I've been hearing a lot about these cookies.
You know what's interesting is they taste like a little bit different every time, and every time they're incredible.
But I don't get it. I thought eggs are what make the cookies chewy. No.
There's egg replacers out there, Raghunath.
Yeah, even flaxseed works really well.
Okay, Okay.
I don't know what he uses, but
what's the secret?
To our announcements. We got back to recovery group meetings at 12:30 and 1 o'clock today Eastern time, and in person at the Bhakti Center this evening at 7:30 p.m. And see, Don Cayley does use ground flax.
Okay, that's he just put a secret recipe. You could have made a fortune off this, Don Cayley. He just put it on the message board for everyone. Ground flax seeds. Yeah. It works.
It's not the whole recipe; it's just part of it.
Okay.
We have Q&A day tomorrow, 8 a.m. So if you have questions, you can write into us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com.
All right, 8 o'clock. Well, that's good news. And announcement, me, Kastuba, and Mara, we're going to India this year. You want to go to India, go on a sacred pilgrimage? It's happening. And we're going to so many good holy places, Kastuba.
All right.
Jagannath Puri, Udaipur, Napdwar, Rishikesh, Hardwar, and Govardhan Hill. So excited to go to Vrindavan and Govardhan.
Yeah.
Excited to do it with you because we haven't been on pilgrimage together. Really going to the places in many, many years.
Last time was 2000.
In the year 2000.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. because we went to Jaipur and Vrindavan together at that time.
That was 2020, Papa.
What am I saying? 2020. That's what I meant. I always do that when I go to say 2020. I say 2000. I don't know why. Anyway.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, but that, not even that. But that was, we just went to 2 places. This is like we're going on a whole magical mystery tour.
Okay.
I tell you, it truthfully, and it's the way to really experience these holy places, because you go with people that explain them. You sit there, you contemplate them, you understand how to enter a holy river, enter a holy temple, meeting holy people.
Show us the way, Raghunath.
Show me the light. Anyway, it was when I was 22, I first went to holy places, and I vowed someday I will bring people here, because I had such a positive experience, and I'm so honored that I get to do that. It's my favorite thing I do all year.
Great.
All right, buddy. Let's dive in. So we're in a whole new chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
We are. But before that.
Yeah, before that, we have a nugget.
Okay.
We have what do you got today?
It's kind of, I just got caught up in reading something this morning. And so I never found the nugget. But then I said, this could be the nugget today. But it's going to tie in, because what we're going to read, we're getting right down to it, Raghunath. We heard Prahlad's teachings to his friends.
Yeah.
And those teachings are going to infiltrate the whole school, right? Like
whenever
all
you
the kids
lay down
are
some heavy truths, there's always some people who don't want to hear it. You're going to find that, even though you're feeling like I'm part of a great philosophy here, a great lifestyle, and you ever do this when you first got into Bhakti? You're like, this is so great, everybody's gonna love it, and all of a sudden you get maha pushback from people.
Well, but the kids were into it. That was the thing.
Kids were into it. The kids were like, yeah, this makes sense. I get it. I opt in. I check the box. And but in this chapter, Hiranyakashipu's going to hear about it, and he's not going to be happy.
Well, the teachers were just like, oh my God, we had this one kid, and now he's like turned all the other kids onto this. We are going to be in big trouble. So they go and they tell Hiranyakashipu, they tell Prahlad's father. And he's so furious. And he's going to ask a question to Prahlad. Because he's, the teachers, these are like really high level, super intelligent, brilliant, influential people. They're terrified. Then you got even other rulers of other planets that are terrified of Hiranyakashipu. But little Prahlad is just writing in his, very humbly, he's got his palms folded, and he's standing there gently, but without a drop of fear.
I think it's safe to say,
opposing him,
I think it's safe to say, as we advance in bhakti, our anxiety, our fear diminish, because you start to get to this point where, how can you hurt me? Don't you understand that we know how this book ends? God wins, light wins, truth wins.
So he's, so Hiranyakashipu becomes so frustrated and angry. He says, where do you get your power? How are you able to not be terrified of me? And Prahlad gives this answer. I get my power from the same place you get your power.
Driving crazy.
I get my power from myself, right? I don't get my power from anybody else. So this is it. I tied this into a interview I saw. I got to look this up. Maybe Mara, can you look up Brian Cox, COX? I saw a little like a 10-minute clip of an interview on Joe Rogan with this scientist Brian Cox. He's kind of like the new popular scientist out there. He's a young guy. He looks like he could be like in a band or something like that, like he could be in like a pop band.
He is a musician.
Young, cool scientist.
Oh, he is a musician. There you go.
Yeah.
What is it? What do you got about him?
He's an English physicist and musician who's a professor of particle physics in the School of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Manchester, and the Royal Society Professor for Public Engagement in Science.
Okay, so he's the Royal Society Professor for the Public Engagement in Science. I guess that kind of means like he's like meant to be like a face or representative of science to the popular world. And he does it well. He's kind of like, he's like an alternative to, guys like Hitchens, who's just like, I'm incredibly pompous. It's just like, I'm like ridiculously everything that you picture like a pompous British snob. I not only am
And
that, I
sort of
embrace it, and yeah.
the
Or someone,
stodginess of some
yeah,
old
yeah.
professor or physicist. This guy's cool. He could be like in,
He's like hip, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
know, Smashing Pumpkins or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Play
He
guitar.
could exactly. Okay. And and I'll grant him this, that he's more respectful, like someone like Hitchens or Dawkins, they just mock and spit on and just, like they're nasty. Whereas Brian Cox, I can see he's like more of a gentleman, and I appreciate that. But he said things in this interview, because I saw the headline was, it was something like Brian Cox denies the existence of the soul. Okay, well, let's check it out. So Joe Rogan's interviewing him. So let's read what he says. And here's a point, and we've gone to this point before. What I see in a lot of these popular, some people call them like religious atheists, right? Like religious in the sense that their science becomes a religion, they're placing faith in it, and they kind of lose their objectivity. He seems like a nice person, and I'm sure he's very brilliant, but it seems to me like he's lost his objectivity. If you're like the Royal Society of what was it called again, Maren? The Royal something of Science. Grand
Grand Poobah.
the Grand Poobah.
The Royal Society Professor for Public Engagement in Science.
Okay, so he's the Royal Society Professor.
I need a title.
I'm sure there was a ceremony too where he receives, they put some kind of medal on him or something, and got that
jewel.
Yeah. So in any case, if you're going to be that person and you're going to go on practically the largest media platform that exists, we would hope that you'd have you could very clearly explain and defend your views. And when I heard what he was saying, it seemed to me like you're just in the simplest ways, you're not really getting to the point, or you're subverting, going around, becoming diverted, and it's intimidating to the common person, I think, to hear someone speak, because he's going to throw out words and concepts that I don't even understand. So, okay, he just knows more than me.
Right.
But you can also, if you just look at it simply, you have to answer a simple question. And if you avoid that question, he has to address the question. And so let's get into what he says. So let's see where we start here. It begins with a conversation about consciousness. He says, we don't know what consciousness is. It is often called a hard problem in science. We don't know. So it's a good question. And then he starts to say, like, whether you could build a self-replicating machine, which is what you're talking about. I'm not sure where they were going earlier in the conversation. But he's kind of equating a self-replicating machine with a conscious being or conscious life. So it's a good question whether you could build a self-replicating machine, because that's what we are all, the humanity, or all the different species. We're all these incredible self-replicating
machines,
conscious machines with intelligence and emotions and so on like that. So could you create that? Could you create this thing and it could go to the moon or Mars and replicate itself and then carry on, which is a living thing, I suppose. Right there. Come on, man. You're the royal Grand Poobah of science. You suppose?
No.
And then Joe Rogan says, yes. So then he says, does it have a sufficient level of intelligence to be conscious? We all understand that, that's right there. Who says that, like, the level of sophistication is intelligence, meaning like its ability to calculate? Is that what consciousness is? Or is consciousness something that you feel, right? Like you have an abacus, and then you have like a simple calculator, and then you got a more advanced computer. At what point does it become conscious? Now, the yogis of ancient India say it's never conscious. It's just a more sophisticated calculator,
Right.
right? Why are you making this assumption? Does it have a sufficient level of intelligence to be conscious? You have to defend that idea, and you have it, right? So he says, we all understand what you can't define is that emergent property. Now, just the word emergent is loaded because you're saying it doesn't exist at some point and then it emerges out of matter, right? Like, right?
They've got it actually backwards.
It's entirely
It's
backwards.
almost like you're trying to figure something out from the outside, whereas the Bhagavatam teaches something from the inside. You're just trying to feel your way around and try to figure out how is this thing animated, you know.
Yeah, it's and you know what? I don't have a problem with his belief that consciousness emerges out of matter. But what I have an issue with is that he's going to say one is faith and one is science. He's got faith that consciousness arises out of matter. He can't prove it, but he's speaking as this is science. This is not based on faith. We're going to see whether it's based on faith, right? So let's continue. He says, I don't know. He says, we all understand what you can't define is that emergent property that has to emerge. You've got something that's intelligent enough to replicate itself and live and run. First of all, you don't have that. Science has never produced that. I don't know the answer, but it's worth considering that this thing with emotion, meaning love and fear and all those things, are just the things that happen when you are intelligent, like as if to say intelligent enough, where your level of the sophistication of your ability to calculate reaches a certain level, and then you have emotions and you have love. And there's absolutely zero proof of this. They can't produce it. They can't make it. There's not even really any reason to think that it even makes sense, right? Okay, so then he says, Joe Rogan says, right. And then he continues, I don't know the answer to that. The caveat is always that we don't know. It's just not understood. But then he says this. Then he makes this claim. He says, it's physical, though. I'm damn sure it's physical.
There it goes. Guesswork taught as fact.
Exactly. He says it again. I'm damn sure that there's nothing going on in my head other than what is allowed by the laws of nature as we understand them. And so then Joe Rogan says, so eliminating the woo, you mean? And I think what he means by woo is like
anything you can't perceive empirically.
Anything mystical, yeah. So he says, so eliminating the woo, you mean? The idea that the soul being some sort of divine thing that's inside the housing of the body? Okay, that's exactly what the sages of ancient India teach, right? Okay. Yeah. So Brian Cox says, he says, yeah, I mean, I know. He says, I know. Then he backs down just a little bit. I would say, he's pretty right. He says, I know. I would say we can rule that out, actually. I've argued against that in the past. So a second ago, he said he's damn sure. Then he said he's no. Now he's saying, I would say. I've argued in the past. Okay. So Joe Rogan says, how do you rule it out, right? How do you rule out that consciousness is a divine spark of spiritual energy situated within the caging of a material body? How do you rule that out? Okay. And I'm going to do my best with this because I didn't edit this yet. So, and because it's I'm taking it from the transcript of the thing. So I'll do my best to represent exactly what he said and edit it as I read. He says, I've argued that we can rule that out in the following manner. Okay. So here's my arm, right? So it's made of electrons and protons and neutrons. And if I have a soul in there, something we don't understand, but is a different kind of energy or whatever. Why say whatever, right? When you say that, you're just trying to make it sound silly, right? But no, that's what they're saying. It's a different kind of energy that operates according to different laws, right? There was a time, a century ago, where there were laws of physics that were just assumed could explain everything. And then the most brilliant scientists discovered that within the atom, it seems like there's a whole different set of laws of physics in there, and that was called quantum physics. And all kind of crazy things that would never seem possible were suddenly possible. right? So it was kind of like, well, that'll play into what we're about to read. So he's saying, I have my arm. It's made out of protons and neutrons and electrons. And if I have a soul in there, something that we don't understand, but it's some different kind of energy or whatever, it is this we don't have in physics at the moment. It interacts with matter, because this is where I wish I would have had time to edit it. He says, I'm moving my hand around, so whatever. It is something that matter interacts very strongly with matter. Okay, whatever is conscious is interacting very strongly with matter, is what he's saying. He's saying that if there is this soul, it's interacting very strongly with matter.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
It is.
that's
It's
our point.
moving
Yes,
matter. We're saying the
exactly.
same thing.
But
It's moving my hand back and forth.
yes. So he says, but if you look at the history of particle physics in particular, which is the study of matter, we've spent decades making high precision measurements of the behavior, how these behaviors and how these things interact, how they behave, how matter behaves and interacts. And we look for it, right? We're looking for, what is that conscious element? What is emerging, right? We've looked for it. We spent decades making high precision measurements of the behavior and the interactions. We look for it, for example, for a fifth force of nature. So we know that there's the force of gravity. There are two nuclear forces called the weak and the strong nuclear forces. There's electromagnetism. So these are four forces. And that's what we know exists. And we look for another one with ultra high precision.
Okay. Kusub,
Yeah.
let me jump in here for a
No,
second.
we're almost at the point, Raghunath. Just try to keep your attention here, Raghunath. I'll summarize it. He's saying we know of four forces, and we've been looking for a fifth one with our ultra high precision, and we don't see any evidence of it. So I would claim that we know how matter interacts with these energies. We know how matter interacts very precisely. And now listen carefully. So if you want to suggest that there's something else that interacts with matter strongly, then I would say that that's ruled out, because we've looked so carefully for it, right? I would go so far as to say it's been ruled out by experiments, or at least it's extremely subtle. And you would have to jump through a lot of hoops to come up with a theory of some stuff that we wouldn't have seen when we observed how matter interacts. That is how matter interacts with what is present in our body. So he went from saying, I'm damn sure it's physical, to saying, well, it would have to be very subtle, and you'd have to come up with a really good explanation, you know. Now, if we go to the Bhagavad-gita, right? Here's Bhagavad-gita 3:42. The working senses are superior or more subtle than dull matter. The mind is more subtle than the senses. The intelligence is still more subtle than the mind. And he, the soul, is still higher or more subtle than the intelligence. Now, if you go to Bhagavad-gita 13:16, it says the soul, and here the soul and supersoul, exist outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving, because he is subtle, shukshmavat, right? He is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Right, so right there. It doesn't matter what kind of powerful microscope you're using.
This is what I wanted to go to. Prabhupada, Vedic masters, they respect people's intelligence. But Prabhupada gives even the smartest people a title, which immediately takes away the beautiful title that physicist got, which was, Prabhupada calls them speculators.
I thought you were going to say Dr. Fraud.
People who don't know, but they're speculating and putting forth as perhaps a truth or
I'm damn sure.
I'm damn sure, and leading with that.
Right.
But in reality and look, I'm no genius. We know that. I've been called dumb as stone. Okay. But suppose me and this guy are laying on our backs in a field and we are looking up in the sky and we're seeing a 747 flying overhead. And as smart as he is, we still have no clue at all. What is this thing? Before we even, suppose we don't know what an airplane is. What is this thing flying? Is it some type of bird? Is it, first of all, our senses are limited. We can barely see it. We just see that at night there might be some lights, but we just see this thing flying. And even if we could extend our eyes with a telescope, even if we could build that, we still might not be able to get an idea of what's going on. We may not get an idea that people are inside and that there's actually a driver of this machine. And this is where we are in material science. All we can do is guess. Is this thing a bird? Is this thing a spaceship from an alien spaceship? What is going on? And we can guess and guess and guess, but there is a limit to our senses. Our senses are limited, and we have to understand that. And the easiest way to understand that, I bring it right back to here every time. If there is a bug on my computer, even though he's right next to me, he does not have the senses to understand who I am and that we're having a podcast.
He's saying, I'm looking around all over the place.
I'm right here. I'm looking around. I was like, and I'm trying to tell the bug, hey, we're doing a podcast right now. The bugs will never understand the podcast. It's way beyond. He'll never figure it out. It's beyond his senses. So we might speculate. We might be really, really intelligent, and you can still never get it. Hey, it's no big deal. We get it. We are tiny. We're finite. There is a limit to material science because we have limited senses, and we can't have perfect knowledge with imperfect senses. That's just all there is. We're bug-like. And that's okay. But when the bug starts making like statements of fact and teaching them and pushing them forward, pushing them as fact, that's a problem.
Right. And here's where I'm saying the objectivity is lost, right? Later on in that interview, Joe Rogan is going to say, after he continues to make his arguments that there's no such thing as some spiritual element, he's going to say, Joe Rogan says, but for whatever reason, for people, there's some incredible motivation to find a divine something or other, that there's something greater than this physical being. There's something. Why do you think? Why is there that compulsion in people, right? So he's saying, okay, I'm buying into your, at least for the time being, I'm buying into your explanation, which he didn't explain. He just said, we've looked for it and we haven't found it.
Yeah, you might know.
And he's saying, well, why are they so bent? Why do they have this compulsion? What is it? What psychological motive? What is clouding their objectivity? But really, why not just flip that the other way?
There's no objectivity.
It's saying this guy is a scientist. Like, science is this thing which is all based on objectivity, right? Like, I'm going to this without any bias, and I'm looking, and he's saying, I'm damn sure. Well, you're not damn sure.
I mean, how can we even say we're even sort of sure? If you really want to project, I think even with what we do, I always start it with like, well, the Vedas teach this, and it could be like this. Once you start to say it's definitively like this, that's a problem. And I feel like we are bugs just trying to like figure out the universe and then present them.
And our point.
And our ego is behind them, and therefore we can say, no, I'm definitively like this. Even with myself, and I study all this stuff, I could say, does Krishna exist? He could exist. He could exist. There are practices of faith that actually tangibly work in my life. Meditation, control of the senses, rising early, all these processes. Do I know Krishna's a blue little cowherd boy? I don't know. He could be. Can the absolute truth, the source of everything? Could be. People who have been on this path before me have had that realization. Do I have that realization? No, but I'm continuing on this path. And as I move on this path, I notice more and more things are manifest to me as I step a little closer.
And that's honest.
And that's honest. I'm not presenting. Now, I could come off, Krishna, you fool. Don't you understand the origin of everything? It says so right here in this book. We're not presenting it like that. It's not a faith-based process. It's a it's not a faith-based process. It's a realization, a practical realization-based process where you're moving forward and then things get revealed to you in time.
And what we're saying, and you know, we've used this example, like say you had someone applying the same type of thinking as Brian Cox is to, like, say, studying the Mona Lisa. We've taken out our microscopes. We've analyzed what it's made out of. We've looked. We know with all kind of precision instruments what the canvas was made out of, even though it's, you know, centuries old. And we know the exact pigments, and we can break it down and tell you exactly things people couldn't have told you years ago. With our instruments now, we can tell you exactly what the pigments of this painting were made of. And we've looked and we've looked and we've looked, and we've seen no evidence of a painter.
Yeah,
we just
that's a good one. We've seen there's no painter here.
Yeah, you're not going to see the painter with that. And how are you going to find out? Someone's going to tell you. It's through testimony that you're going to find out who painted it. That's our thing. We're saying there are texts handed down by these sages that are testimonies to understanding what consciousness is, and you can experiment with them. You know. Now, Prabhupada continued. There's a couple of things he wrote in his purports. 13th chapter is so great, and these are towards the end of the 13th chapter, but they speak exactly to this conversation. Text 1333 says the sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman does not mix with the body, though situated in the body. You can look with all your instruments, you're not going to find it, even though it's there. Right, and then Prabhupada writes in the commentary, he says the air enters into water, mud, stool, or whatever else is there. Still, it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, although situated in varieties of bodies, is aloof from them due to his subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with this body. That's exactly what he's saying. Well, there's some contact with matter, so you know, and how he is out of it after the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this. And then, let me read this next. This is the commentary to the last verse of the 13th chapter, 1335. Prabhupada writes, "One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements." There are scientists back, these sages were scientists. They were breaking down the elements of the body. The body is a gross manifestation. And the subtle manifestation, subtle again, right, is the mind and psychological effects. And the symptoms of life are the interaction of these features. But over and above this, there's the soul. And the interaction of these, there's the soul, and there is also the supersoul. The soul and the supersoul are two. This material world is working by a conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements, and can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul, becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation. Just what you're saying, right? These things are meant for contemplation and then for realization. And one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. There are other approaches to try to understand these questions.
Maybe this physicist needs a spiritual master.
He needs a spiritual master.
Now, there were some other famous commentators on this same point. Maybe you've heard of Shelter, the band Shelter.
Okay.
Shelter had In Defense of Reality, because often spiritualists get accused of being woo-woo. They get accused of being running away from reality. So we said, actually, their conclusions prove their insanity. A creation without a creator, can it be? Just like a painting without a painter. Absurdity. Absurdity. No, I don't want to run away. I want to embrace reality.
Okay.
Shelter, circa 1993.
Okay. So now let's get in and let's hear what Prahlad is going to speak to.
We're on chapter 8, my friend. This is exciting. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmadatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 8, Text 1. And this is called Lord Nrsingadev Slays the King of the Demons.
Oh, yeah.
Quite exciting here.
Yeah.
It's called the Acharya stands up, he speaks truth, he's realized, and all of a sudden you're going to get pushed back from the material world. It's going to happen to everybody here. You're going to be inspired and you're going to get pushed back.
Okay.
Here's what happens. And then God saves the day. Next one. Narada Muni continued. All the sons of the demons, right? They were all getting preached to.
Yeah.
By Prahlad. All the sons of the demons appreciated the transcendental instructions of Prahlad Maharaj and took them very seriously. They rejected the materialistic instructions given by their teachers, Sunda and Amarka. When Sunda and Amarka, the sons of Sukracharya, observed that all the students, the sons of the demons, were becoming advanced in Krishna consciousness because of the association with Prahlad Maharaj, they became afraid. Right? There's a revolution going on in the school. There's an encampment going on with the students at the Hiranyakashipu High School. They approached the king of the demons and described the situation as it was. So the teachers are worried.
Yeah.
When Hiranyakashipu understood the entire situation, the rebellion of the students, he was extremely angry, so much so that his body trembled. Thus, he finally decided to kill his son, Prahlad.
Whew, he was really triggered.
Yeah, it was a trigger. Hiranyakashipu was by nature very cruel, and feeling insulted, he began hissing like a snake trampled upon by someone's foot. His son, Prahlad, was peaceful, mild, gentle, which probably makes you even hiss more, trying to get someone there completely not disturbed by you.
Yeah.
His son Prahlad was peaceful, mild, and gentle. His senses were under control, and he stood before Hiranyakashipu with folded hands. According to Prahlad's age and his behavior, he was not to be chastised. Yet, with staring crooked eyes, Hiranyakashipu rebuked him with the following harsh words. Here's Hiranyakashipu.
What does he say?
Oh, most impudent, most unintelligent disruptor of the family. O lowest among mankind, you have violated my power to rule you, and therefore you are an obstinate fool. Today, I shall send you to the place of Yamaraj.
So he's going to kill him and put him in front of the judge of death. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting that he believes in Yamaraj. He believes in Yamaraj, but not in God.
Well, this is their thing. It's kind of like the scientists. Like these atheistic scientists, like, we believe that there's laws.
Yeah.
We get it that there's a system out there. We just don't like any idea that there's a person behind it, that we are any way inferior to, that we any way are dependent on, that we're any way submissive to. That we don't like. And it's that aversion, which in my mind, I'm saying that's what's clouding objectivity. But yeah, Hiranyakashipu, he gets it. There's a whole system of how Dharma works, and there's laws in the universe, and I'm going to manipulate.
We can use them and manipulate them for more power and more joy, or more fun, rather.
Pleasure.
My son Prahlad, you rascal. You know, when I am angry, all the planets in the three worlds tremble, along with their chief rulers. He's even accepting that the planets have rulers. Okay, but by whose power has a rascal like you become so impudent that you appear fearless and overstep my power to rule you.
Okay.
Right? That's
Yeah.
sort of shocking when you're trying to threaten someone and kill someone and lord over them, and they're just not. They're not.
Well, particularly because Hiranyakashipu had conquered the universe. There were people like Indra were afraid of him. People that, wielded the thunderbolt weapon and could, fight entire armies on their own were terrified of him. The rulers of the different planets were terrified of him. And here's this little boy, and he's completely composed, and he's repeatedly contradicting him, countering him, doing it in a gentle manner. How in the world are you the only person I can't seem to put in place? What is it that you've got? Where's it coming from? Your ability to not be afraid of me. And then Prahlad, he's going to say something that's just so insightful, but still more infuriating.
This is text 7. Prahlad said, "My dear king, the source of my strength, of which you're asking, is also the source of yours. Indeed, the original source of all kinds of strength is one. He is not only your strength or mine, but the only strength for everyone. Without him, no one can get any strength. Whether moving or non-moving, superior or inferior, everyone, including Brahma, the creator, is controlled by the strength of the supreme personality of Godhead." Now,
yeah,
if you feel like, I'm just going to climb this ladder of material success, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting better, I'm getting smarter, I'm getting more charismatic, more and more people are thinking I'm cool. If you hear about the supreme personality, this becomes a problem because it ruins your godship.
Yeah.
You see this happen with people. I think I told this story before. I had this person do my teacher training once, and great singer, charismatic, and I signed up for your teacher training because I really love the fact that you do kirtan in your teacher training. And the more and more this person started hearing philosophy, the more and more they started becoming unattracted to all these teachings, because what I realized was they don't want to sing to serve God. They don't want to sing to glorify God. They want to sing to be God. They want to sing to be the center.
Right.
And that's what's behind their kirtan. They want to be a little mini Eastern, Western rock star. And that's a big problem in Bhakti. We're not the rock stars. We are glorifying the center, not becoming the center. I don't care if you're doing it with if you're some hedge fund investor on Wall Street, or if you're sitting down with a harmonium. If it's all about you, that's material life. And if you see yourself as part of something bigger and you're here to serve the center, that's spiritual life. It doesn't matter what outfit you wear, or what job you had.
Right. And so when Joe Rogan said, so what do you think it is that makes people so compelled to think that there's got to be some soul within the body, some spiritual element that science can't explain? Why do you think people are so compelled? You could just as easily flip it the other way and say, why are people so compelled to deny the possibility of the existence of another type of energy? And what is it that's being triggered in them? Now here we see Hiranyakashipu, he's like topmost materialist. The guy's risen to the top, he's conquered everyone. And he's just furious that anyone, what to speak of his own son, would tell him right to his face that you are dependent on someone else. Ultimately, you're weak. Ultimately, you're asking me where I get my power from. I get it from the same place you get your power from. What are you talking about? I've gotten everything by my own hard work. There's no woo out there, right? There's no something spiritual beyond. It's insulting to me and my own conception of my own dominance, my own power, who I am, my own ego, my own conception of who I am. To think that I'm dependent on anyone else is infuriating to me.
And this can often be a disqualification to have this incredible intelligence, because any incredible gift can be an incredible source of ego. And whenever there's ego, information can't come in.
Blockers.
It's
He goes the
information
truth
blockers.
blocker.
It's
Yeah.
truth blockers. It's God blockers. And so that's why Prabhupada, and I can't remember those purports when Prabhupada said, well, people might, one of the purports of chapter 7, I think, where he said, actually, they're not great scientists, philosophers, they're actually just arrogant. There are Vedic scientists, there are Vedic philosophers, but with their great intelligence is a type of deep humility where they can hear. And when you hear, you can change yourself. You can see things differently. You're not trying to put forth your ego. You're trying to get to the bottom of truth any way you can. And even if it means admitting, like, you know what, I thought I knew all this stuff. I don't know that much. And that way you invite information, and you invite knowledge, truth, and spirit into your life.
That's our, where you kind of started, Raghunath, was this idea that you take these ideas and then you experiment with them, right? And you analyze them, and you think about them, and you consider them. Now, what Prahlad just gave Hiranyakashipu, he gave him something to think about. How do I get my power? Where do I get my power? I get it from the same place you get your power. You are not an independent being, right? Now, Prabhupada says this, he says in the commentary, and this is what sages do. They'll try to give you a macro to help understand the micro. They'll try to give you some analogy in nature to help you understand, oh, I see the pattern. Okay. So he says, if one sees extraordinary strength or power anywhere, it is derived from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To give an example, there are different grades of fire, but all of them derive heat and light from the sun. Similarly, all living entities, big or small, are dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? The power of fire that we find in a log, right?
First, we got to get people to accept this. But
no. I mean, you'd light up a log, you can see the fire comes right out of it, right? So there's fire in that log. There's energy in that log. Where does it get its power? It gets it from the sun. Okay, then you could find fire in its other forms, in its gaseous forms, or fire in other material forms, right? Where do they get their fire? They also get it from the sun, right? And I did a little, because today is Science Day here on.
Yeah,
So this is from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine.
You had a whole morning, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
It says when sunlight strikes a plant, some of the energy is trapped through photosynthesis and is stored in chemical bonds as the plant grows. Of course, we can recover that energy directly months or years later by burning the plant products, such as wood, which breaks the bonds and releases the energy as heat and light. Okay, so the heat and light, it's in there. And when you break the bonds, it comes back out. We use the stored energy of the sun in much more concentrated forms that result when organic matter, after millions of years of geological and chemical activity underground, turns it into coal, oil, or natural gas. So whether you're using coal, oil, natural gas, wood, it's all the energy of the sun. The power in all of them is coming from the same source. If the wood were to say to the oil, where do you get your power? I get it from the same place you get it. Right?
How dare you?
and so Prabhupada is just saying, try to see, these patterns. This is how things work. We all have some power.
That's a great analogy.
And we have a power source.
Put that out there. That was a great analogy.
Well, Prabhupada put it. It was Prabhupada's analogy, yeah. Okay. And so just as our fuels have, it goes deeper, Raghunath, because you could say, what about like hydropower, right?
Yeah.
The sun heats the Earth's surface, and the Earth heats the air above it, causing wind. Mm-hmm. Water evaporates by the sun, forms clouds and rain that give us flowing streams and rivers. Both wind and the flowing water, hydropower, are sources of energy. So you see, the sun is the source of many kinds of energy we find in nature. Again, it goes back to the sun. So Prabhupada's saying, whether it's me or you or anyone else, a deva, a demigod, an animal, a plant, where does it get its power? It's all coming from the same source. That's what Prahlad is saying here. think about it, meditate on it, contemplate on it, and practice and see where this goes. Be open to it, right? Be open to the idea. All right.
Miss Mara, take
Right.
us home.
You got it. As we advance, fear and anxiety diminish.
As we advance in our spiritual life.
Fear
So if
and-
you're suffering from some fear and anxiety, I got some good news for you. Take baby steps forward and watch them diminish. Just
Okay.
happens.
Thanks, Virgo.
The soul is the most subtle.
Most subtle of all.
It's the most subtle.
Our senses are limited and imperfect.
We call it the subtle body, right?
Mm.
I mean, it's just interesting that at first you said, I'm damn sure it doesn't exist. And they said, well, if it exists, it's very subtle, almost implying like it's just too subtle to. But from the beginning, the sages are saying this is subtle. This is very
Sure.
subtle.
Yeah.
They're using
I
that
mean-
exact term.
It's like we have a source. We're laying on our back in the field. We're looking up at that plane, and we have a source that says, by the way, this is a plane. This is it's made by man. There's people in that plane. There's a guy in the front that drives it. We're just getting insight to what's going on. You're still not going to be able to figure it all out from this vantage point, but I'm just going to give you some insight. The Vedas are giving us that insight. That's all that's going on. We understand there is a mind. That's subtle. That's even subtler than the body. Then there's the intelligence and the ego, and
More subtle.
even more subtle.
And then
We're
there's
just
the
getting
soul,
some
most
insight
subtle.
into the building of the flying machine.
Mm.
All right.
It's not a faith-based process. It's experience-based.
Yep.
Hear the testimonies. Don't just look at the painting for evidence of the painter.
Okay.
There you go.
I mean,
Painting-
really, there's plenty of evidence that there was a painter just by looking at it. But yeah, ultimately, who it was, we
A
hear through
creation without a creator. How can it be?
absurdity. Virgo.
Mhm.
Absurdity. Embrace reality.
You get inspired, then you get pushback.
Okay.
You're going to get inspired, people, and you're going to get some pushback. Not everyone's
for
going to
that.
opt in. You're going to go home on Christmas. You're never going to believe what I found. The Bhagavad-gita. Krishna's a blue cowherd boy.
Society suckers, right? They just.
We sing to glorify God, not be God.
That's
Oh,
why
man.
we sing. Yeah, that's our kirtan.
Ego is a God blocker.
Big
God
time.
blocker. Yep. Hi, we're God blocker. We're Chicago.
The wood and the oil get their power from the same source.
From the
Love
sun.
that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. And
Mm,
the physicist needs a guru.
yeah, that's right.
Physicist needs a guru too. That's okay.
Even that could be a name of a band. We're the physicists need the guru from
We're the physicists.
Athens.
Can't use that. Hey, everybody. Join us in Italy. Me, Mara, and Costuba are doing our 4th annual Italy pilgrimage. It's sort of a pilgrimage. It's sort of hanging out with wisdom sages in a beautiful place, doing beautiful things, eating beautiful food, meeting beautiful people. Go to wisdomofthesages.com/events. You can check that out. Also, we got some space for
Bella
our
people, bella food, bella.
Ciao. Wisdom of the Sages retreat at Super Soul Farm is happening over Memorial Day weekend. What a great way to do it. There's some private rooms available. Me, Costuba, I was going to give Costuba a private room, but he wants to snuggle with me. We're going to spoon me and
No.
Costuba.
No.
Give it me, Costubi.
Just give me the private room.
So there's some private rooms available, and then we have these. It's great. Super Soul Farm's great. Come on up. Great way to enjoy the spring and welcome the summer. And spread the word. It means a lot. Right now, I want everybody to go to our YouTube page and subscribe and hit the bell icon to follow, to give alerts, and comment on the videos that we put out and then share them with people. That makes a difference, and that helps spread what we're doing around. And that's a very simple way you guys can give back to the podcast if you get something valuable here. We are committed to putting out the most valuable content because it's not our content, it's the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is the source of all spiritual content. It is the content. That is the news that we're looking for in this life. So, now we're going to do what we are born to do. We take our hands, put them together, we move it back and forth. There, everyone's back into it. It's going away. See, we pause this for a while. I don't care if you're
used to be
sitting
all
down
about
in
the dancing.
meditation. I don't care if you're driving 85 miles per hour on the freeway. I want you to start clapping your hands. Drive with your knees. Just kidding. Don't do
with
that.
your knees.
Your cars are just spinning out of control.
You know, I could see the lawsuit, Raghunath.
I know.
Like,
I can see it.
They're
so
playing this tape back. Drive with your knees.
He told me to.
Notice earlier in the same broadcast, he was saying how you have to find a guru who teaches you and you have to have faith. And he ordered them all to drive with their knees.
And then, but previously, he said he was dumb as stone.